expand from there. And Sir Walter Raleigh's a very prominent figure in this as well. He's the one that really pushed for these voyages to go over and create a colony, and this has happened about 3 times, but it's something that has been quite mysterious, because when you look at the historical documents on it compared to the archaeology, and then you compare it to what the public is able to read about it, it's very confusing because the story is very conflicting. And some people have even compared it to Darien, which we've discussed, where Scotland tried to create their own colony. Some people have theorised that the ending of this colony was similar to that one. And a lot of people believe that food was an issue here. And this is around about the time that the Spanish and the English are trying to be very colonial, and things are hotting up, things are very tense, and people are wanting to build an empire. And for the English, Roanoke for them was proof that they could actually colonise overseas. So this was something that was very important to them. And Sir Walter Raleigh decided that he wanted Roanoke, and he's had quite a few people try and fail. So you have Sir Richard Grenfell in the first one. He had led the overall mission, and they managed to get to Roanoke on their fleet called the Tiger. And they got there and they realised they needed food and supplies. So he was like, okay, you stay there, I'll be back as soon as possible with some supplies. And originally they had put men over there, so there was no women or children, it was just men, and that was to create a fort and some defence from any natives nearby, because when you have a family, it's more emotional. You're not going to want to fight for everyone if you want to protect just your family. So it was just more easy to have men over, and especially as the time as well where women were seen to not be breadwinners or go off doing these fights. They had to stay at home looking after the children and being the perfect housewife. So that's another reason why women didn't go. So it seems very logical that they took men over there. And the reason why people were comparing it to Darien is because maybe they didn't bring the correct supplies with them, and that's why it kept going downhill. But on 9th of April 1585, they departed from Plymouth, and they went over. The Tiger went off then to Portugal, and then they went off to Puerto Rico in the Caribbean, and then they ended up in America. And Grenfell, Sir Richard Grenfell, established a base camp at Roanoke so his crew could rest and so they could defend themselves from the Spanish forces. But Ralph Lane had used the opportunity to practice for the building of a fortress here as well. That was needed for a new colony. So they're really seeing, at the end of the day, I think they're doing things very logical. It's just the fact that they had very little supply. So when Ralph had gone off, it was said that the Tiger actually was damaged, and because of this, the Tiger was delayed a little bit in coming back. So by the time that Richard Grenfell went to come back after the repairs of the Tiger, he had found that this colony had disappeared, and it's not like disappeared that they just left everything and the people were gone, everything was gone. And that was what was reported. So they went back, and it was in 1587 when you have John White, who wanted to do it. The second expedition as well of this, before John White as well, there was again a lot of men still trying to create this colony. They also disappeared. So two lots of people have disappeared at this point. And the third one is the one that's been a topic of conversation, because this one has a lot of mystery. I think there's just a lot more meat to it. And a lot of people have related this to quite a number of things. So lack of supplies, attack from the natives, attack from the Spanish. They split into two groups and went somewhere else. Some people have said aliens. Some people have gone down the route of like American Horror Story, that they were all killed by natives, or something bad happened to them, and eventually they ended up haunting the land. So that's another interesting spin on it. Some people have believed that it was famine and disease. But if it was famine and disease, surely there would be evidence left behind. But there was nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's where you can see it on the map. Now, when you look at the map, to me, it does not look like a place that would be short of supply. You have an eel trap here. If you can see the red circle that I've just drawn, so there's an eel trap here. They're collecting fish all by here. So you know, to me, that doesn't seem like it's short of supply. And then you've got the fortress by here. And by the fortress, you can see 3 fields of crops, again, suggesting that no lack of supply. And then there's a person by here hunting the deer. And you could see loads of different boats. In fact, up at the top of here, you can see another little fortress sort of thing and a field. And there's loads of boats, there's loads of connections. And each one of those islands, no one have said whether there's anything on those islands, but they've marked them out. They seem like they're important. So this map, to me, would suggest that they had a lot of supplies to actually survive on the land, and it looked like it was all going well. So I think the fact that they ran out of supplies, maybe it doesn't seem plausible, but it could have been plausible that they had a famine. And a lot of people have discussed that generally we're going to discuss basically what we think had happened in the first half, and in the second half we're going to look at the archaeology. And the archaeology, to me, definitely gives an answer. But this is something that's untold, because after everything had happened, Sir Walter Raleigh was actually criticised for this, and he was obviously later sent to death. But Sir Francis Bacon in 1597, he said this was a dishonour. He put guilt on Raleigh for all of this, because what happened was that they got here in 1587. And it was men, women, and children, and people even say that the first child to be born on American soil was the first European child to be born on American soil was born here, and that's been something that's quite known in American history. Her name was called Virginia Dare, and she was said to be John White's granddaughter. It was his granddaughter who gave birth, it was his great-great-granddaughter, but she had her child here. So she seemed to be a very important figure as well, in the first European person to actually be born on American soil. So this story is giving America a lot of things. But the issue with that, although a lot of people have discussed this and have said this, there's actually no evidence of that happening. So when John White had come back in 1590, so 1587 to 1590, why did it take him so long to go away and then come back? Well, this was at a time where it was all kicking off with the Spanish Armada. And when he had come back, they needed every single ship to protect England and Britain. So that was why he couldn't come back, because he had no ship to get back. And it's not like he could send a text message, because I was thinking when I was researching all this, I thought, me being completely blunt, I think it was just the tiredness overrunning. I thought, why couldn't he just send a text being like, oh, I was stuck here a minute? And I thought, well, it's 1500s, that's why you couldn't send a text over. But they had no way of telling them. So these people were ultimately stranded, waiting, and he didn't turn up. And people have said, well, why didn't you create another ship? Well, that ship, because they needed every ship, that ship would have been taken from him as well. So the best thing he had to do was wait. And when he came back, he was shocked, because everything was gone. Again, disappeared, nothing left, no signs of life at all. It was like no one even went there. The only thing that he had found to show that people actually were here, and also hang on a minute, I forgot to show you this photo. This is Virginia Day being baptized. Just a recreation of the story in an image form. So yeah, a lot of people have looked at this picture, and yeah, so we come back to this site, and this site has been preserved now, and it's been marked out, and there's been excavations here. But he came back, and there's a lot of treacherous water around the island as well. So they think that was part of the reason why the Tiger in the first voyage there had failed, because it got damaged through the bad water. But when John White had come back, there was no signs of life at all. But this on a tree, Croatoan, it was a clue. There was also said to be another one, which was COR. And this has been something that's really sort of had people's heads scratching, because some people have said that they were being attacked by natives because they would have left a longer message to White to tell him where to go, other than these. But what the theory is that basically they'd gone off to another area near another tribe, a native tribe, and that's the English spelling of this native tribe, and they're just trying to tell him that's where we've gone to. But he had no knowledge of this. Now, this BuzzFeed Unsolved, they said what I was thinking, which was me being quite childish. I thought, what if they did go off with the tribes? I said, and they didn't really like John White, and they were all in on it together, like they were hiding behind the bushes, and he's there looking for him. They're going, look at him. He looks a bit stupid, don't he? He can't see us at all. And they've been hiding from him all along, so not even his people liked him. But that's just a silly theory, and people have even had these sort of jokey things saying that was left on the sign. So again, there's a lot of comedy added to this as well, which if you look at things now, there's not much comedy added to it. It's more horror and gore and scary. But this just made me giggle, because people were just laughing at the fact that maybe they were just all in on a joke and they were hiding from him. And he was like, oh, well, they're not here, I'm gonna have to go. And they're like, oh, we've got him fooled. And then you see things like this: we've decided to go and have sex with the nice people on that other island, be back never. So yeah, a lot of this jokes and discussion have come out of it, especially in earlier periods in popular culture, where it's developed quite interesting in how it's developed throughout history. Because in 1605 there was a comedy made, it's called The Eastward Ho, where they joke around that the colonists had intermarried with the natives. And can you imagine, if that did happen, could you imagine? I think that would be something that would be so shocking for everyone back to England. Maybe that's why no one discussed it, and that's why some of the history have gone forever, because this is something that they possibly didn't want. But these people went to mix with the native tribes nearby, because they were able to allow them to live with the land and live with them, and it's a much more happier community. But this is what it is said to look like within the fort of Roanoke. Again, it's been debated on this reconstruction whether it's actually happened, whether it looked like that or not. But on a whole, after Sir Walter Raleigh's shame, his dishonour, this was ultimately a big failure, and something that we didn't really want to talk about. So America and Europe definitely, I think, overlooked this until 1834. So it was about in the 1600s where they're discussing it in play, but it is almost like it never happened. People went silent about it. And a history of the United States was created in 1834, and it discussed this is by George Bancroft. He discussed the nobility of Riley. He was really making him look like it's almost that type of history, isn't it? That school of thought, the great man theory, that Riley was this amazing man. and he experienced treachery from Simon Fernand, who was the one that was in charge of the colony when he left. He said, "Simon, you be in charge of this while I go, and I'll be back." He's sort of painted him to be treacherous because he was ultimately what people call nowadays a snake, because he just left and didn't tell him anything. And ultimately that ended in a tragedy of this colony, of it being gone. But this was the first person to write about Virginia Dare as well. So this child to be the first child to be born on American soil, a European child. So he was the first one to sort of point us towards John White's first great-grandchild born on US soil. But as you go further throughout history, you see that in 1837, so there's a lot of discussion in the 1800s about this, Eliza Lanesford's cousin had wrote Virginia Dare, or The Lost Colony, and this was almost like a romance novel. That White's granddaughter was taken by the natives, and it was her adventure of living with them and going through this new world on her own. And in 1840, Cornelia Tuthill had also published a similar story around those same lines. But as you get to the 19th century, the late 19th century, the earlier 20th century, it has been noticed that Virginia Dare was used for a way of racism, for saying that we are meant to be here and sort of legitimize the unfair treatment of natives as well. So again, shows how the story have changed over time. This is just a mystery of where they've gone, and instead of looking and trying to find out the true story of it, people are making stories about what they think had happened, and someone has chucked in a story here about Virginia Dare, who we don't actually know actually existed. But to move on, you get to 1999. So I was 1 year old. There was a short story by Stephen King called Croatoan on his mini TV series, Storm of the Century. So again, you see how he's changed now. So he's gone from something that people discussed as dishonour, created a comedy on it to mock Riley and the colonists, then moved on to talk about the story of it and how that's gone into romance in terms of Virginia Dare. And then he's moved on to a horror type thing. And then you have American Horror Story, which is my favourite series. Each series is a different type of story. And one of them is called Roanoke. And the story of that, you can just see how they've twisted it. They've played on the mystery completely. So they've said that the lost colonists had died mysteriously, but now they're haunting anyone that lives on that land. And they were haunting the natives at the time, and the leader had banned them from this world by writing the word Croatoan on a tree. And the series shows John White's wife as the butcher who goes around killing people, but there's no evidence that he brought his wife over there. So again, you can see how popular culture is affecting this story overall. And it's very interesting to just see how the public have perceived this. And I think what the issue is from this, what we can gather from this, is because no one really knew, and it was never really spoken about after it happened, because this was such a dishonour on England. They failed 3 times in this area, but it was not like they failed and they knew why. It was mysterious. Like I said, everything was gone. It was like they had took the stuff and gone. Thought was gone, everything was gone. So this here, you can't see anything. You can see the earthworks of where something once was, because they excavated this in 1895. So when the interest was booming of this, I think people had enough of writing stories about it. They wanted to know at this point. And obviously they didn't know much. But the archaeology of today have really stands as an eye-opener, really, in my eyes. But it's very interesting. So this was that John White, I think we can all agree, is an important figure in this story, and he keeps appearing in this story. He's being tested by Sir Walter Raleigh to make this colony work, but it's a bigger failure than Darien, really. Because this happens 3 times. It happens 3 times. But I think we have to take pirates away from this. Pirates never happened. It was just, I think, an ultimate story of failure of miscommunication by people. So look at this photo again. So this is what it's meant to look like. It's been debated because some people don't feel like it looks like that. So some people think that the houses aren't as modern as for that time, not as advanced. But it's, you know, I think it's not about what it looked like. I think that the first mystery of this is what happened to him, and then we can go further. But like I said,
is it actually in Virginia? Is it on the west?
Yeah. So well, look at this map here quickly. By here, Anne. Can you see? And right, so basically what had happened is that they all went here. They've gone 3 times. The theory is that they've sailed all the way somehow to here, near a tribe here, and they think that the English spelling of that is Croatoan. And then some people think that they split into 2. So some think they believe they went there, and some believe that they went over by here. And so that's where the archaeological excavations are thought to be.
Where is it in relation to, you know, New York? Like,
I'll look at it on a bigger map. I'm really bad at geography, Anne. So I'll have to look at a big map if that's okay in the break.
There's a lot of water down here, isn't there? So
yeah. Go on, Pat.
It's south of New York, New Jersey.
Right. Okay. Here you go.
New Jersey, right.
So that's, you know, that the plan of this, and from what you can gather, I don't know if any of you can see from the map that I'm showing at now. So despite my rubbish drawings on the side, I'll remove them. Where they think they originally had gone. So I said they sailed some way or somehow got here. I don't know if you can see on the paper. It's almost like something's glued over it. And this is what has led to people looking in this area, because when they looked into it, they put a light over it. They found an invisible ink. This here was almost like a fortress, but it was like a double fortress ultimately. So this is what has led to people excavating these areas. But we'll get to that in a bit, because because that's what it looks like up close. You can definitely see that is something there. So what the theory is that people think John White was expecting them to move from Roanoke and build a fort there. But that has created a whole discussion as well, because no fort was ever found at all. So, like I said, White was meant to return in 1588, but it was 2 years after that he left, and he had speculation with his own people as well, whether it was disease or whether it was a massacre. But I think if there was no signs of massacre. If there was a massacre, there would, you know, maybe buildings burnt down, things destroyed. There's no evidence of that. And you know, what we can gather from that map there as well, John White was an artist, so he did draw a lot of animals that he had come across as well, but he drew this amazing map. And for the time that it was, I think if you plonked me in a place and told me to draw a map, it would be completely awful. And some, you know, I've looked into medieval maps as well, for example, and that boggles my brain, because I don't understand how yes, you could be familiar with the land, but how do you even know that that's what the way that it all looks from bird's eye view without actually going bird's eye view? But yeah, he's done a very good job of it for the time. And he's marked out all the tribes there. So I think, to me, that would suggest that maybe they did have good relations with the tribes. If he's able to mark them out, possibly interact with them, it's a different narrative to, you know, the English coming over and being very brutal, but this was obviously before we actually did start establishing colonies over there. So I think this was something that you know, we were very unsure, so I think we didn't really want to go over there very bloodthirsty. But so what I was arguing with that is that maybe these colonies sort of intermarried with the natives. They sort of assimilated with them as well to survive, because white, in their eyes, he's too, you know, he was meant to come back in a year and he hasn't. So you can't wait around forever, they possibly think. And
there's definitely Indian names, aren't there? You know, you can recognise like Manitou and Malek and Kanta, you know, that.
I would try and say the names, but again, I'm really bad, and Carl was struggling with them.
Like
so
they named the place.
Yeah.
You know, they'd already named it, you know.
Well, that's what I didn't really understand, really, because John White had obviously created this map and he's named this tribe up here to be different to Croatoan, but maybe the people on the island Roanoke just wrote their own way of spelling it because they didn't know. Some people even theorise that maybe that was the word crocodile, because no one actually knows whether it was COR, CRO, or whether it was Croatoan. It's debated. But there's been a lot of discussion around the word Croatoan, and they have pinpointed it to that tribe over there. But some people have said that they've sailed over here, and I'll get the pen out. It's like a little ship by there.
Titipano. Titipano. That sounds Indian.
Yes, Anne. But yeah, they seem very native for the names, and that's why I just generally think he had knowledge of them, because he had interacted with them. And you see the ships all going around, but that circular thing that I've pointed over by here. I'm thinking, well, they, you know, this island here, they have discussed it in terms of that. They split it off into two and going into these islands. The fact that there's like a little boat there, to me, suggests that they did know about the area. And there's also different types of boats. You've got great big ships and smaller little boats. So to me, maybe that's a mixture of the natives and sort of sailing across the different parts of America.
What's that
noise?
Yeah, it sounds like a whoopee cushion.
You'll have to turn off the microphone of Dell's. He's fallen asleep, I think.
He's snoring, is he?
Yeah, the Zoom user.
Yeah, I got it.
And turn his microphone off. He's fast asleep with his.
It won't. There you go. Oh, I've sent it to Anne instead. It's not letting me turn off Dell's at all.
No.
So I don't know. We'll have to. Hopefully he wakes up.
Asleep. He's asleep.
I could send one to email to
he's snoring.
Carl.
Oh yeah, because Carl's the host, isn't he? So that's why you can't turn the
Okay.
He was getting himself comfortable.
In all fairness, I've slept in lectures before, and I was in a politics one, and the woman was just going on and on. I just remember giving me glares when I woke up, because as I was going off to sleep, I made a noise. I think I must have fallen in my sleep, and I went, my God, everyone looked at me in the hall.
You'd think all our talk would wake him up.
Yes. So this is something I think if we're going to look at it as disease, where are the bodies? Where are the bodies? Surely they would be burying people. There would be some sort of evidence of life. Massacre, again, things would be left behind.
I don't think so.
And I think the fact that people, because obviously I think for an archaeologist that's looking at this and finding this map, it's almost like they know. So I think archaeologists are sort of thinking this, and historians thinking this very logically, and just sort of go into these areas to dig up. But I think popular culture have let people steer towards aliens. I've seen so many people argue aliens, and someone actually argued that maybe that fortress there was a crop circle, and he was just trying to hide the crop circle from people. I just can't see any legitimacy with that. I think the reason why this fortress was hidden, because people would say, why would he hide it? I think he hid it. He knew where they were going, to protect them from the Spanish. He didn't want them to find out in any way, because what I had read was that back in England, the people that he was showing in the Royal Court, who he was showing all his findings to, his map, he felt like there was a Spanish spy there, and he felt like he was going to be betrayed. So if he did go over there with a map, they could have possibly looked at that and thought, oh, that's a mistake, because it was common back then with parchment to have a bit extra and glue it on top. You see, especially in medieval manuscripts, you see a monk with a pen in his hand and a knife in the other, so we can just cut out. So I'm definitely, with the light showing more information of it underneath, to me just shows that this was like some sort of invisible ink used to hide where they had gone. So despite the desertion of the Lane colony, Ralph Lane, I think they felt like this was good land, and I generally think the reason why they kept coming back was not because it was a place of poor supplies, so to speak, because like I said, they're establishing ways of living. You've got this island here, and it's got 3 lots of crop. I think I read something about them growing tobacco there at one point. They're living, and they're getting along with the land quite well here, and it's not like they weren't eating fish back then, especially in the medieval period. So even though the medieval period was before then, it wasn't long after that. Some people say the medieval period ended in 1453. Some say as soon as it hits the Reformation period in the mid 1500s. Again, the end of the medieval period is discussed, but what we know is not far from the time that it was the late 1500s. Eating eels was a delicacy, it was a luxury, so they have eel traps there. So that's a source of food. Someone's catching deer. They're having connection to the land, and they're able to use this well. So I don't think it was like that. People have compared it to Darien of how it failed because they couldn't get along with the land, but I generally don't think that's what the issue was. I do think they did have a connection with the land. I'm sorry, I was just seeing, because you said I had a chat, but it's not coming up now. So again, I think they've just brought something that was quite popular business of eels to the land. They've got cultivating land, so the fact that it could have possibly been a famine, but meat, fish and deer and all that. Meat was a very common thing to eat in the Tudor period. Vegetables wasn't really heavily relied on. More people were interested in eating meat and fish. So even if the crops weren't getting on too well, they had the sea around them to actually live off. So I don't really see the lack of food being the best one. But more recently, archaeologists have had a look. So I think this was between 2017 and 2019. Yes, it was. They had a look at the trees nearby. Oh no, sorry, this is a different date. So 1998, Jess popped into the world. There was climate research on this area, and they found that there was extreme drought from 1587 to 1589. So the time that they got there, right up till before white had come. And this affected the tide water, and the reason why they were able to look at this is the ball cypress rings nearby those trees. It was just, anyone who knows dendrochronology, they normally have the spacing between rings. If they're very close together, that means it was a drought. If they're very spaced out, then there's a lot of water that year. Del!
Wake up!
I'm phoning him.
Del, wake up!
You got a phone number.
I'm only phoning him on Messenger.
Well, Messenger's got quite an annoying ringtone as well. It could wake him up. I hate when someone calls me on Messenger. Panics.
Hello? Hello? He's turned me off.
Well, he stopped for the time being.
Well, he might have woken him up. Dell?
When he turned off his picture, he should have turned off his sound too.
Oh, that's all right. I told him.
Sometimes I forget to do that, though.
I told him to turn his sound off.
I've forgotten to put myself on mute before as well.
It's all got quiet now.
Yeah, you probably panicked him, man.
Off the stool.
2015 to 2019, they had quite a interesting way of trying to find out what happened to the colonists, and this was going along this contemporary theory that the colony.
You're falling asleep in front of your meeting.
Am I?
Yes, I'm stoned.
Oh.
Anders.
Silence.
Oh, we can hear you snoring.
Can you turn your sound off?
Did. There it is. It's off.
Oh, bless him. So 2015 to 2019 was very interesting. They went down this route of contemporary belief that they assimilated with the natives. That's where they went. They were lost, but they weren't lost. They were just lost to us. So 2015 to 19, there was a genetic analysis done. And this was a genetic link with the natives and colonists, is what they were looking for. And this is quite unreliable at the moment, because colonist DNA would not remain. The test that they originally wanted to do, the DNA would not.
Can you turn your sound off?
I'm okay now.
Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
It's quiet now. It's fine. So this is unreliable because the colonists.
Apologies.
DNA, it's all right, Del. The colonists' DNA would not remain in the natives with the one test they wanted to do, would not remain in the natives' DNA for about 5 to 6 generations. So that would not work. So they decided to test the Y chromosomes and the the mitochondrial DNA.
Yeah.
Which is a more reliable way of using a way of analyzing DNA, because it's a long span of time we can look at rather than just sort of trying to keep it to the 5 to 6 generations. And they did find bones in this site that was hidden here. So that one there, they did find some bones there, and what they did, they were bones that they found from 430 years ago, that they believed to be possibly colonists, but they're yet to identify them to any native descendants. So that's something to watch out for, because it's something that, even though it's till to 2019, is still something that they're working through. They haven't really found us an answer yet. But I think what's the reason why we don't know, why there's so much confusion in history and in our archaeology, is because Sir Walter Raleigh, his aim was not to tell anyone about this. He didn't want anyone to find the dead either, or basically what the argument was, that if people did die in these colonies, he didn't want anyone to find the dead. He felt like if he kept it quiet, he could have maybe possibly claimed Virginia for himself as well. So that's very interesting. But some people think, on a whole, it wasn't discussed because it brought so much shame to England that it would have annoyed the monarch at the time. So they felt like maybe we don't discuss it because we're just sort of exploiting our weaknesses, especially against the Spanish. But on a whole, what is interesting is that this obviously would have, if we did have connection with the natives, this would have been discussed by the natives. Their history's oral, so unfortunately we possibly couldn't get a Native American perspective, because possibly their history is sort of, if that person was the only one that had seen it, that the last other person to see it or know about it, and they die out without telling this story to someone else, then really the oral history have died down with them, which is a shame, because I think from all this we're really getting a European perspective on it, and I think it is making us look like we were really nice and we were going over being nice to everyone. I think maybe more force and more oppression would have been used than what we originally thought. But like I said, this whole unknowing of how many individuals, what had happened, where it happened, especially this map now as well coming into it, it is creating a lot of popular culture that is sort of distorting people's what they know of what happened, because from what I read of this one thing of BuzzFeed Unsolved, there was these two blokes, they're American, and one of them actually said they learnt this in school, in high school. So it's quite interesting. It's something that they feel connected with, but I think if we look at it from the perspective of a European, I think it makes us be more connected as well. And White did not say about where they could have possibly gone, because I generally think that he wanted to protect them from the Spanish, and it just ultimately ended with them getting along with the natives nearby and creating a different sort of society. But the archaeology is what is key to all this, because we've gone through all the documents and the documentation, like I said, popular culture, stories, because nothing was really discussed because of how shameful it was for Britain. So I think what the key evidence is the archaeology. Is something that I always say, let archaeology be the horse that pulls the cart, and I think in more recent times I think that's what they've actually done. But I think it was an issue of confidence on where to start the excavation, and finding this map was, when they did find it, this was 2012 they found this. This sparked them to really talk, and in 2020 was when they've come out with some very interesting archaeological evidence that have sort of changed what people believe. But there's even rumours that when they did go over there, they were living off the land so well, they even brought their own they brought the potato to sort of come over. That was a rumour, and they don't really know. But what you can see in, is it this image? I don't think it's this image. There's one image where basically you do see a few sunken ships along the coast of Roanoke as well, and it just related to what I said about it being waters at the time. It was very hard to deal with, and that's why the tiger has ultimately sort of had damage to it as well. So what we're finally asking really is, I've told you about the dendrochronology, I've told you about the genetics, and they seem very promising in giving us clues, and the last thing is a proper excavation. And what I think is the rhetorical question about all of this really, what is a rhetorical question? It could be a question that could be answered, but it's heavily debated. Is, have we finally answered the question of Roanoke's fate? Now, what is coming out with the new research in recent times has left some archaeologists feeling like they've had to sit on the fence. They're still waiting to be persuaded, whereas the archaeologists that have been on the field feel very, very confident that this is what happened, that they split into two groups and lived near other tribes to survive. And I think what is key here is possibly comparative archaeology as well. You have to compare some of the pottery that has been found to pottery in Britain to actually just identify the pottery. But this is a time where there's been two occasions and people have disappeared, and they went there for a final time and it happened again. This isn't a coincidence where people are just constantly disappearing after another. I think this is something's going on here, and I don't think it's something as gory as people make it out to be. I generally think it's gory because of people are looking at what was written about it in popular culture. I have a book downstairs. It's not an academic book. It's a book that I bought for, I think it was £3 in a shop that was having books that were very cheap. And they touch upon things very lightly, but they do go down this very dark route. And I think that's what sort of motivated people to believe that this was a dark route. And I think that their fate was. And I think that's what's making the interest of this story peak. And I feel like people aren't feeling like they're being persuaded by the archaeology, because it's not as grand and dark and dramatic as what we've been told right up until then. Like I said, this has been a story that has been surrounded by romance, by humour, by violence, it just seems to sort of put us off the story. And I think that was what was meant to happen, because again, if this was a failure like England believed it was, they're not going to want to talk about what actually happened. And like I said, after the 1600s, it had gone out of people's mouths and it popped back up again in the 1800s. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. I can't wait to get into the archaeology of it, because that's when it all spices up in my eyes, because I always knew about the story, but to actually know that there was archaeology that is out there that tells us maybe definitely what happened. I generally believe in the archaeology that we're going to discuss after the break. I generally think that this is what has happened, but quite a few archaeologists disagree. Mark Horton from the University of Bristol, he also discusses this in great detail and has dedicated a lot of his work to this, and he's come out with some right interesting good arguments for it. And I think he's also a very important, significant figure in today's time in terms of this story. So I'll stop share. Yes, stop share. Anne, is there anything that you'd like to ask?
Yeah, I think that's the thing about archaeology. It's such a new, science. I mean, we have got written work from, like you say, all the written and people's imagination and all that gets filled in. But now we're getting the archaeology of these places. It is going to answer a lot of questions, I think. As to whether they did remain did integrate into the society, or or whether they just remained themselves.
Yeah,
communities just living side by side.
Yeah, and I think that's when you look at older perspectives of it, there's a lot more drama and blood and but gore.
I just don't think that the natives were that vicious. I mean, they became vicious after they'd experienced the white man, the white man taking over their territory and everything.
Yeah, and that's just offence. I think when people paint them out to be very barbaric and animalistic, they're only defending their land, their home, and that's something that we would have always done. So I think that's another thing that they played on as well. When it all failed, they kept going back and they were going, "Oh, is those natives? They're very bloodthirsty and they're taking our colony." But if you felt like that, how did you manage to interact with them and put them on a map?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Surely you'd be gone completely if they were that savage and barbaric. And you see some images of them sort of being in a big crowd, sort of attacking and it looking very violent. But I generally think maybe we were the ones that were the bad ones in all of this, and we've always I don't know if anyone's seen Addams Family Values, where they go off to the summer camp and they're doing the play on Thanksgiving, and Wednesday Addams is Pocahontas, and that she's meant to play along, and halfway through they actually do sort of attack the people who are playing the colonists, and she goes, you've taken from our land, you've killed our women and our children and our men, and you've raped them, and she puts the realistic spin on it. And I think, really, are they just portraying themselves onto the natives and sort of blaming them for our failure? Because ultimately, or did we not fail and they don't know where they went and they did blame the natives, really? And in all reality, this colony was living a good time with them, having a great life. because especially archaeology has proven that they were living at least 20 years with the natives peacefully after Roanoke. So yeah, I definitely think they've been portrayed very badly in this story.
Especially the early 16th century or 15th century, 16th century. I think around about Pocahontas time was like the beginning of the 20th century, I think, or the 19th century, something like that. Anyway, it was just a poem.
It's just a fictional story.
I don't know.
But I think I've read something about it being a true story in a way, because John White and Pocahontas, that sort of story, that I've read something about it that it wasn't John White. I think it was another man that had come over and brought a native back here, and eventually she was treated quite poorly and died quite young.
I remember that.
Yeah, it's a very sad story. But thank you, Anne. Pat?
Oh, yes. I was wrong. Roanoke is in North Carolina, which is
North Carolina.
Yeah, which is
right.
Virginia, which is below Maryland and New Jersey and New York. And they did say it was the colony. She was Roanoke and the Virginia colony. So we think of her being born in Virginia. It's because it was the colony of Virginia, which has now become that part of the state.
Yeah.
So that was good. And then I looked up, another theory is that there was a huge storm that, wiped it all away. So there would be some evidence of that, I think, but I don't know. And then the other thing, it'd only been 5 years. Couldn't they go and look at the natives around the area and see if there's did anyone look? And
I think that throughout time they looked in Roanoke, but it was like they didn't expand past that island. But when ultimately the natives could have popped over and they said, do you mind if we get on your boat with you and bugger off this island because we've had enough of it? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem, come with us. And as possibly, like I said, it's all communication. If only they had a mobile phone back then, and it could have just been like, oh, problem, kicking off back at home, be back soon, miss you all.
They're still investigating it even now. I think I was trying to see if there's something from 2021 or something. They're still looking and stuff. So
they're still picking. I think one part of the issue is, and I think it does go with the theory of the storm, is that I've got to find it. I have written it in my notes, but it was from between the 1800s till now. The land itself has sort of been taken back by the sea. So they think that maybe some of the archaeological evidence that is there is possibly underwater. So that could possibly be another way that they could go and investigate into, because they checked where they think it could be, but like I said, the water could hold so much more, so many more clues for us to actually look at. Thank you, Pat. Bill?
I'm just thinking maybe one reason why there's so little in the historical record is the fact that expectations weren't met, because obviously it costs a lot of money for the rich merchants of the old world, etc., or governments to actually sponsor these colonization projects. So maybe they expected to find some wealth there in the form of mineral wealth or a Native American wealth, and it just wasn't there. And interest was lost over a period of time, and because there's nothing to write about really. Possibly one reason why they know so little. But as regards the DNA you mentioned, did you say that they actually found the remains of some of the Native Americans there?
Yeah, they've said that they have found, so where they've dug up that fort, they believe that they have found some bones, and they're looking at it to see if it has got connections with the colonists or the natives, but they haven't actually said really whether it was a definite that they think is the colonists. But from what I can gather of them looking into it, they do feel like that they have found, I think it was the colonists of later from the 1600s that have gone to Jamestown, and and they've taken their remains and see if they can find any relation with the native descendants, but they haven't actually identified anyone from any of the native descendants to be used yet.
No, they haven't. Yeah. Yeah, well, that answers my questions basically. So it's still ongoing, the research is ongoing, etc., etc.
Yeah, the latest they've heard of it is 2019. So hopefully they've been quite busy in lockdown.
Yeah.
Let's hope. But yeah, it'd be very interesting if they find that, because I think that would just sort of prove that theory that they mixed with the natives nearby.
That's what you want, isn't it? Sounds like interbreeding. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, thank you, Bill.
Okay. Thanks, Jess.
Del, anything?
Yeah, I've seen quite a few sort of documentaries on this. Plus, I've read quite a bit about it as well. I mean, thinking of what Bill was saying, at that time, the Spanish were the sort of main, explorers at that time. And they were bringing back all this gold and stuff from the Maya, Aztecs and Incas and everything. Yeah. So, the rest of Europe probably wouldn't have been allowed that far south. Yeah. So they knew there was another sort of landmass further north. So maybe they were going there because, what if the Spanish have got stuff there? There's stuff further north as well. There's a big civilization. There's this, there's that. Because, if we think about those times, it was the sort of English. Scotland was independent and they had a colony there. The Danes had a colony. The Dutch had colonies. And they were all sort of, and the French, mustn't forget them. And, they were sort of looking, I think, for easy gains, treasures that they could take, apart from looking for land, because obviously they weren't colonizing properly, were they? No. I think they were just sending people out to say, right, go on, is there any civilization there that we can sort of take from? Yeah. Fortunately, apart from the Spanish, at least Rome didn't go there. Yeah. Can no you offense imagine? To Catholics, but they would have decimated the place. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was a case of, look what the Spanish have got. Look what the Portuguese have got. We're going to have all that now. We'll go further north now and we'll take from up there. Excuse me, my voice is going.
It's all right, Stel.
It's hay fever and antihistamines.
Oh, bless you.
So, that's my take on it. And thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good take on it and definitely something that needs to be considered with it all. I do think especially the Spanish has got a big part to play in all of this. But thank you, Del. Henry, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, I just find it a really intriguing, ongoing story. So I'd just like to obviously see what else comes out. Yeah, really definitely. Interesting. Yeah, no, I can't wait until after the break now so I can show you some of the finds that they have. Me being a nerd, it just got me very excited because I didn't know that there was archaeology on that. I just thought it was a mysterious story that people have put into popular culture. But also intrigued, that map is extremely detailed.
Yes. Yeah. It's like what I just don't understand how they were able to do it back then. There could be a few hiccups on there, but on a whole, he's done well. And that's for someone who can't get into an aeroplane and have a look from a bird's eye view. I just think it's amazing.
I think he was a cardiologist,
I think they did it from the water. I think they do a lot of map making from the water. So there's a lot of water around. So
the coastline seems to be very important.
Oh, thanks. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
great.
no, thank you. Thank you, everyone. So we're gonna go and have a little break, and then I'll be back in a bit.
Okay.
Yep.
Take care.
We'll see you in a bit. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Hello, Anne. How you doing?
I was down in the hospital this morning.
Oh, what for?
My eyes.
Oh, what are they doing?
Well, I well, my eyes haven't been, they've been getting worse. My eyesight's been getting this one.
Cataracts?
This eyesight.
Yeah.
And this eye, I mean.
Is it cataracts?
No, it's I've got macular degeneration.
No. Oh, it's terrible. Did you
It's
smoke? Did you ever smoke?
I did until I was, 40 odd.
Yeah, because they say that has something to do with it.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
I know. I mean, I gave it up 20 years ago, you know.
Yeah.
But it's because I haven't got high blood pressure and I'm not diabetic. So you said it is age related, but obviously it's early for me. I'm not 70 yet. So.
Well, my mother smoked from probably 22 to 69.
Who was that?
My mother. But
my mother.
Yeah,
my mother did.
Yeah, another 20 years she lived afterwards, you know, but she got macular degeneration.
Yeah. It's I've got to go and have injections in my eye. But it's only the one eye at the moment. This eye is absolutely fine, you know.
Yeah.
But I will have to have a different lens in this eye because it's just no good. Well, if I go like that, it's all blurred.
Oh.
I can't see anything. So
I've got a friend who's 92, and she has macular degeneration.
Who is that?
A friend, Joyce.
Oh yeah, my mother-in-law's got it, and she's 95. Well, she copes all right for, you know.
And she will, you know, instead of texting me, she writes me a letter, and so she can see well enough to write a letter, you know. So she had to give up her driver's license though.
That's the only thing.
Yeah.
But when did she give her license up? When she was in her 80s, was it? 80s?
Yeah, I suppose late 80s, because she was driving 83, 84, 85, 86.
Oh, well. I'm hoping that, you know, well, I've seen how my mother-in-law manages, you know, with microscopes and, magnifying glasses. She does crosswords and things, you know. But she can't read a book.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have the sound books, you know, they have a special thing. You have all these books on.
Yeah. I mean, I wish my mother-in-law would do that now because dementia's getting worse. So she hasn't got the will to maybe look for a crossword book, you know. She hasn't got that kind of competence to think of what to do, you know, and she's just getting bored.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hiya.
I've put a YouTube link in the chat. You don't have to look at it. It was that BuzzFeed Unsolved coverage of it, and it's not just two people sat down talking. They do show pictures, and it's very visual. And like I said, it's very humorous. So it could be worth having a look, and they do discuss some of the archaeological debate around it, which the most things that I've seen on YouTube haven't really discussed, from what I can gather. The reason why I found this was because of my interest for true crime and unsolved mysteries. And I think that's what a lot of unsolved mysteries YouTubers have actually sort of, they've taken over this quite a lot. But this BuzzFeed Unsolved I just think that it's a very nice way of covering it, how they've done it, and it's a nice thing to put in the background while you're pottering about. But yeah, it's worth a watch if any of you have got. I think it's on for like 15 minutes. But it's still interesting. I think I'm sharing the screen with you all. Is it showing?
Yep, it's showing.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Actually, I got to stop sharing a minute. I just realised something. St Mary's Well Bay. Karl just wanted me to discuss what I had. So I went down there. I know Roanoke Point quite well. We didn't really look at St Mary's Well Bay. And I knew there was an abandoned house there, but again, didn't really look into it that much. And I went there with a little bit of research. I didn't want to go there with too much research, because sometimes if you look at other people's research and what they have found, it can overcloud what you might, you know, you might be looking at just what other people have found rather than seeing if there's anything different. And I have looked at some images. So in 1916,
we discuss what may be the oldest mystery in the United States.
It's all right, Pat. I got confused and I thought it was my laptop because he was doing it in the break. I come back and
I'm trying to copy it and then paste it. Is that what you do? You know, when you say you give us one, I see it there, but when
and then paste it, yeah,
it disappears. So I've got to copy it and paste it. Is that it?
Yeah, you can also click on it and then quickly pause it because it opens up a completely new screen. I actually, just to find the link, I actually clicked on the video, but I thought I pressed pause. So when I came back in the break and I could hear these two familiar voices, I thought if they jumped in on the Zoom call or something, have they taken over my lesson? And then I worried that it was possibly being heard by all of you and giving away half of my lesson to you all, but it wasn't. So St Mary's Well Bay, I saw a photo from 1916 that it showed buildings by the beach. One was Rocker Cottage, which is still there, and another one which they think is Pop Inn. And I looked more into the research of how they think that this was an area for trade as well in terms of seaweed for fertilization in the 1700s. There's quite a few dissertations and research surrounding that as well, which is quite interesting. It's all right, Pat.
There we are.
So with everything that I knew, the fact that it was good for anchorage rather than Swan Bridge, and what I knew about it eroding, when I went down there, I thought, right, I'll have a look first of what I can see and observe. So I noticed that the erosion was is typical of sea erosion, is sort of attacking the bay, the lower part of the cliff, and bringing all that away, and then it's leaving an overhang, which is letting everything fall onto it. And there's a pillbox there. And me and Rosamond were there. Rosamond thought that it was possibly man-made, the damage. But I said to her, if you look at the pillbox, you can see where everything's been damaged from the sea underneath. And it's been left to overhang on its own. I said, and it's only got a small bit of concrete, and that's what's brought the pillbox to fall down. But although erosion isn't good, they think eventually it'll stop that road that goes to Swan Bridge, those expensive houses. They think that road will be gone soon. And definitely the pillbox is thought to go in about a year's time. But I think even though the erosion isn't good, I think it's made it easier in terms of archaeology because the erosion has brought everything from the top of the cliff down. So you see a lot of pottery. I have found some pottery from the 1700s there. And I've taken photos, so I'll be putting a little report in the newsletter there as well. And my point was, when I was looking at it, is that this was possibly something that was not randomly used for oh, hang on a minute, I've just got to quickly go and get the door. I'll be back now.
How are you, Bill?
Oh, like a wet rag.
Are you?
Did you
Did you have your blood test today?
I did, yes. We'll go back next week now to see what's what.
Was you down the hospital or was you up in my stake?
No, my surgery in my stake, which is in the hospital.
Oh, sorry about that. My dog, I've got a border collie and he just doesn't like the door and I can't be dealing with it. His bark is bigger than his bite. So I was just looking at the erosion, how that's been able to allow us to find some archaeology, how that'll affect the landscape. And I've been looking at older maps as well to see how the shoreline has moved. But when you look at the beach from the cliff, you can see there's a very, it's almost like scarring from fishing and boats coming through as well. So we're just looking at the beach at the moment, getting a gathering of what we can find and how we can interpret that into the history of it. One thing that we are looking for as well is there's 2 to 3 buildings. So we know Rocker Cottage, we know where Pop Inn is roughly. There's another building that Carl is struggling to find, and I've made it my mission to find. But we've also found evidence of dumping as well, nearby dumping of materials and rubbish. Even to now as well, some people are dumping. So yeah, it's very interesting just to see how the erosion is sort of revealing some archaeology and how it's changing the shoreline.
I mean, we went there about must be 3 years ago now. And it certainly will have changed since then.
Yeah.
Because of this erosion and, you know, I think the pillbox was still there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's in half now.
Yeah. And because there used to be like a base for firing range and things, you know?
Yeah.
The Navy or the military.
Yeah, because you definitely see Roanoke Point has got a lot of the military aspects to it as well. But I didn't really think, you know, you have that on top of near the campsite when you go on top of the cliff by Roanoke. You can definitely see one of the it's almost like a firing sort of gun fort. Yeah, but I didn't really think to look across that bay and see that there was another pillbox. So yeah,
whether they'd shot the pillbox, you know, whether they were shooting at the pillbox from the woods, you know. Sorry, I'm just
yeah, no, that's fine.
I suppose it's so just the two of you, is it? You're doing
but my stepdad's there as well at the moment, so he's given us some good you know, perspectives of what he thinks. I
think it's I think it's good that just the two people, you know, just will go and do these reports. I think it's good.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, so but I can't wait to sort of share with you all and tell you what I had found on my little report. So obviously we're not doing it this week, it'll be next week if anyone feels like they want to join. But yeah, no, I thought I'd share that with you because Carl asked me to, and I've just realised I've spoken about this for a while, so we'll get back into Roanoke. So let's get ourselves in a different mindset.
I'm okay now. I've had a banana.
It's okay, Dal, as long as you're feeling okay.
Yeah, a bit better, thanks.
Good. Sometimes you just need to have a little bit of a break and sort of boost yourself up a little bit. But yeah, so 2012 is when they found this map again. Well, not found this map again. It was in the British Museum, and there's a foundation called the First Colony Foundation. It's a non-profit organisation who to make this their aim to find out the story of all this. And in 2012, they were looking at this map and they noticed that it had been patched over in this part, and that they asked for it to be put underneath it, and they revealed that this was possibly 2 forts, maybe one. It doesn't look like a fort, but they think that the most common theory is that that's how a fort is meant to be drawn back then on a map. Yes, this has sort of been something that have led people to think, well, maybe we should stop excavating on Roanoke because we're having an awful time of it, and maybe we should go over there and have a look. Like I said, so after this all happened, there has been some investigations put forward. So you have the modern investigations and you have the older ones. So 1603, Bartholomew Gilbert had tried to find this lost colony himself, but he just looked around the island, tried to see if he could find anything in the ground, done a little bit of digging, but not much. Didn't find anything and had gone. Just for waste of time, left. In 1607 to 1609, John Smith had described the natives to have walled houses in Jamestown. So where is it? Oh, I can't find the walled houses in Jamestown now. Yes, these walled houses in Jamestown. And what the walled houses are the top image there as well. So these are all a collection of images. So this person here is meant to be Virginia Day. You could see her name written on the top. That's meant to be the houses of Sir Walter Raleigh in the corner. It's the natives, the land, just everything about this story really. And they found these walled houses thought to be made by natives, and John Smith had noticed how this was quite odd in Jamestown, and he even noted how there was people walking around there in European styled clothes. He just felt like it was very strange for that time period. The fact that they thought they were the first ones to enter there, and they're seeing people with walled houses living like they do, really was a bit weird for them. But they didn't relate that to Roanoke. It was an observation he had, and people have later have said, well, this possibly is the lost colonists mixing with the natives. So then a year after, 1610 to 1612, you've got William Strachey, who arrives in Jamestown as well. He goes over there, and he said that everything around him of the land that it was planned out, he said, Smith's map was very consistent, and it showed that this town showed the slaughter of the colony. He believed that the colony had lived there for 20 years peacefully with the tribe, and then the tribe had unleashed attack onto them. So that's why they were gone. And he believed that there were 7 survivors who had fled up the Coan River and met with another tribe. And basically the tribe attacked the colonists because the leaders were advised that they would end up dominating them, and so they had to get rid of that threat. So that was very interesting. He didn't really say much of why he believed that, but that's what he had put down. William Strachey also said that the Powhatan religion of the natives was a satanic religion, and he believed that the reason for attack wasn't the fact that they felt like they were under threat, but the reason for attack was the fact that this was a satanic religion and they wanted to sacrifice someone, and so it was the colonists, and that's what forced these 7 survivors to relocate. And I think that's very interesting, because you start to see now where there's discussion of them mixing with the natives around them and having a community with them. See if my map wants to work. My computer, sorry, just a long day. So this is what they thought the building of this fort would have been like. But when they got to this area, they thought, right, this is a fort near a tribe. Maybe he knew the fort was going to be built there. So that was one thing they were looking for when they were digging in this area, was this big fort, and they did not find this big fort. So I was thinking about this. I was thinking maybe a fort was promised to White when he left. They told him that they were thinking of moving, and they said, we're going to build a fort around about this area here. And he was like, okay, I'll draw it in and I'll hide it because I don't want any spies to find it back at home. And they were like, oh no, that's cool. And basically they were meant to build this fort and they didn't. They ended up mixing with the other tribe. Maybe possibly they were planning on building a fort and they were waiting for the supplies back from England. I'm not sure, but I think that they eventually decided not to build that fort, and I think that it led to White having this miscommunication, because there is evidence that he did go back. Like I said, maybe someone said, why didn't he look all around? Maybe he did know that that's where they were, and he didn't trust anyone enough to tell him. So that's interesting. It does make you question everything, really. But they've also looked at this area in Hatteras Island. But in this area that is marked with the fort, this is what they found there, all this pottery. And the reason why this pottery is iffy is because they believe that this is evidence now that it's gone. And they said, why would they be carrying empty pottery with them? They wouldn't. They'd carry pottery, they would have their supplies in, because you don't carry around empty vessels if there's nothing of use to them. And it sort of proved the theory that the survivors splintered into maybe multiple camps and it assimilated with the indigenous population. So like I said, a team from the First Colony Foundation had found this secret message, and they had found this colonial era pottery, and they believed that this was the Roanoke pottery. And there's a lot of many unpleasant theories of this, of hostile natives, hostile Spanish, disease, famine, deadly storm, like Pat said. But they found fragments of early English pottery. And I think that was very interesting because they're not full pieces of artifacts, they're only fragments. And the issue is that they believe that possibly this is something that was there before the 1600s, where we went over there again to create a new colony. They believe that this is from the Roanoke time period as well, especially with what we are able to find. And it's not just things that have come from England either. There was German and French artifacts found. And they believe that this pottery is very significant. So where they were digging on that site, they did find a tribe, and there was a lot of pottery found of the tribe. But as they got further, they started to find this pottery that was not consistent with how they would create pottery. And this is Nick Lucktucky, he's from the First Colony Foundation. He believed that this pottery is definitely from the late 1500s. And Ivor Noel Hume, he's also excavated Roanoke as well, and he in the 1990s. And Hume and Mark Horton had worked together as well, and they started to shift away from Roanoke Island. And they definitely believe that this evidence here is evidence that they had gone off further inland rather than just staying on Roanoke, and they had taken everything with them because they had the supplies. So I was thinking that possibly they never even planned to stay on Roanoke in the first place. They planned, because there was two missing loads of people from two ways to go. They tried twice and they failed, and they had these weird, mysterious disappearances. So I think they decided that maybe they were going to move on, and that's why John White had mapped it on his, put it on his map, that they were going to go there, and they took everything with them. And the one thing that's interesting as well is the Croatoan Archaeological Society has also come into play with this, and in 2009 they sponsored Horton's annual digs as well, Mark Horton's digs. So he's been able to extensively look into this, and they looked further, and they were able to find lots and lots of materials to them that were they were an anomaly really to natives nearby. And it really did change the belief that supplies and goods were, the lack of them was their fate, really. So they believe that the Anglo-Spanish War had delayed the return of white. And I think possibly he knew about them going, he just didn't want anyone to know, possibly because of this war. Like I said, everything was heating up at this time. And the Roanoke fort had deteriorated, but the earthwork is there. So they did have evidence of that, but like I said, they didn't have evidence of the vessels that they were carrying their supplies in. And like I said, Hurricane Emily as well, with Roanoke Island uncovered a lot of native artifacts as well in North Carolina. And this pushed them to look further into the land. So they found a lot of Native American pottery, but remains, etc. Signs of living from the natives, which is very significant. But then they started to look further, and in 1998, so that's even more, some of the pottery there as well, this green glaze to it, so it looks like the bottom one. Even more pottery here, showing some designs on it, that blue and white. They even found this as well on the Hatteras Island, which I think this is the most impressive one out of all of them, because it's intact. But it's a very European way as well to put things in vessels and carry them around, I think, that in ways like this. So I think that's why it was an anomaly, because compare it to the natives, pottery just didn't add up. So Hurricane Emily had uncovered some native artifacts in North Carolina, and everyone was yay happy. And then they found this signet ring in 1998 near where this native land was. And they believed that this was possibly a sign of someone keeping in heirlooms, a reminder of their old life, really. And they think that this was a sign of nobility as well, which would make sense of the people who was going over there. And this is a significant find. This is not Native American at all, and they definitely started to believe that this was from the time of the Roanoke Island, especially how it was made and the fact that it stayed in an area that wasn't full of colonists either. And it was before the time there was any evidence of anyone coming over in the 1600s as well. But they used the pottery to just look at that. But there's an issue with pottery. The reason why archaeologists are saying they're waiting to be persuaded into believing this evidence is because pottery it doesn't change uniformly over time and space. It's very hard, and definitely radiocarbon here is not precise enough with what we're looking at. So, like I said, Charles Ewan, who is an archaeologist on this, his direct quote is, "We still don't know what happened, and we're still waiting to be persuaded," because he just wants a definite that this pottery is from the Roanoke tribe. But this signet ring is very, very, very significant. They even found this on Hatteras Island. So, the remains of oh, sorry, I forgot what it was called. Hang on, let me get it in my book. So the remains of a gun that was found there as well, which there wasn't a lot of it, was only this, so showing that it was a small group of people that had gone over there. Mark Horton actually had the book called The Lost Colony in Hatteras Island as well, so he really, really looks at this island nearby. So rather than the one where that fort is on the map. But I think when you pair them both together, I think they both show that they split into two groups, and that's why we don't have a lot of evidence of it, because there was only a small amount of them. But they did keep things from their old life with them. And they were unable to navigate through some of the water on their own because it was a bit swampy, so they had to use native boats to go through the swamp. So it's showing that they had to have a connection with the natives, and definitely you see that with Darien, like mosquitoes in the swamp brought the downfall of settlers as well. So people were going down that theory, but I don't think it's possible. If we're finding all this evidence in the land nearby, I think it's signs that they're moving about, and that is not signs of a sick person. A sick person stays; they don't really want to move about. And it's nice, it's nicer to look at this history and look at it with the archaeology. They even found this on Hatteras Island as well, which they believe is a token from Nuremberg. So it's showing that we're having these strong European ties to it, and I think having a European perspective on it allows us to have some more knowledge. Like I said, there was fragments of early English pottery, and they believed that they were taking their supplies with them, and they were living in a camp nearby the natives and living together, eventually mixing in with them. That's why when they came to this building here, they were wearing European clothes. They had walled houses because the colonists mixed with them, and actually they were working together. It was almost like they were taking the best part. So the natives knew how to live with the land, they knew what to eat from and how to live, and the Europeans had all these flashy luxurious stuff. So why not team together? This would make this amazing tribe, and they could possibly show off to all the other tribes. Look, we've got some people here that's not part of our tribe, but they've made us all better than you. So I think it was a win-win situation from both of them, and they were both benefiting. That whole idea of the natives turning on them is quite interesting, because people believe that maybe all this all the pottery being scattered about, etc., was taken by the natives. So they killed the colonists and took what they wanted and just was using all their stuff, really. I don't think that at all, because like I said, White had seemed to mark out a few tribes and shows that he interacted with them, and if he interacted with them, they wouldn't have been that violent, if that makes sense, because if someone's violent from the off-go, they're bloodthirsty, then you won't have a chance to actually mark them down on a map, because as soon as they see you, that's it. So I do think we need to be more forgiving and kinder to the natives here as well. But there was also something else that had been found in Hatteras Island. There was a piece of slate with an M written in the corner, just the letter of M. And they don't know what is written in there, but they believe that this was White's granddaughter telling him where they'd gone in a longer in a longer message. And the reason why they think this is European, because this shows signs of the slate and the writing on it. This was writing material for them at the time. That this was showing signs of a literate person, and that they were just trying to tell the people that were coming where they were going next. But I think nothing is off the table really here. People are still trying to be persuaded, because we are still in the early stages of knowing what has gone on. But like I said, Hume has actually argued to know that the pottery is between 1590 and 1630. So that's why he's a bit iffy, because we can't have a definite time on the pottery. He said, you know, pottery doesn't change over time very consistently either, like how they should be. But I think the deficiency in the archaeology that we have as well is due to the shoreline erosion. Colonies have lost about 928 foot between 1851 to 1970. So you can see how much the shoreline would have changed from then as well. And so they've believed that maybe parts of the settlement was underwater, and that's why we don't know anything about it. So I think maybe that's the first point of that, is maybe like an underwater excavation of it all. But I think the signet ring, it definitely looks something of English descent, of that time period, of a noble who've come over to establish this colony, and he's left this behind. But it's almost like they were keeping family heirlooms as well. Like I said, there was debate whether they lived for about 20 years and then disappeared. I think they lived for 20 years in a separate camp from the natives, and then they started to realise that it wasn't working out, and they ended up integrating completely. But it's a very confusing piece of history, and I think one thing that's wicked about it is the fact that Wikipedia's got so much about it that you can look at the bibliography at the end and see all the information. I forgot to mention that the name of this map is called La Virginia Pars. So that's in the British Museum as well. So I can imagine if you typed in that map on the British Museum website, that you'd come up with that. But Mark Horton said that the reason why we have these bits of pottery and rings, and I think that I read something about them. Yeah, there you go. They found tiny glass beads as well, found to be made in Europe as well. So the reason why they were a bit stuck on it is because the European and the native materials were all found together. So they found deer and turtle bones, handmade and imported brick, native pottery, European iron, part of a 16th century gun, a tiny copper eyelet, which may have been used for clothing as well. And like I said, this 10-carat gold signet ring had been found. And Mark Horton was saying that the lost colony had kept their heirlooms, even as they adopted in native Indian native ways, really. And it was almost like they were keeping their history with them in that sense. A piece of slate, like I said, had been found as a writing tablet with a letter M in one corner. There's similar and larger slate that was found in Jamestown, but this isn't evidence of trade either. There was also German stoneware that was found there as well. And we just know that the natives did not use this Western technology. So that's why we know about the walled houses being something that maybe was an influence from the colonists. But adjacent to the native settlements, there was English pottery, but there was no 17th century English pottery. It was all 16th century. Again, further alluding to this being Roanoke, but then someone argued that maybe this was just pottery they were keeping for their supplies, and they brought it over with them the next time they come around in the 1600s. Again, I think until we find a definite conclusive argument, we won't know. But there was metal hooks found. There were to stretch hides or tents, an aglet, which is, and even tiny copper little holders to secure wool fibers as well. And the reason why they looked at that aglets as well is that they replaced hook and eyes in the first half of the 17th century, but they had not been found on Roanoke as well. So that's what made people feel a little bit iffy, was because they found that there. Maybe this was something from the 17th century, but they're saying that the pottery, the ring and all that wasn't, and maybe the 17th century colony had found them again to see where they'd gone, and they interacted in some sort of way. But they found 275 pounds of native pottery, and they found 3 to 4 pots of English material, which is again led some people to argue that maybe the natives had taken all the stuff themselves. But Horton believed that there was little evidence of trade with the natives. Someone who wasn't involved in on the dig is Brett Riggs. The thing is, he had a thing to say on it, and he wasn't there. He said the natives were quick to scavenge any material, like I said, from the Europeans. They just took everything from them. And he said that even bottle glasses were used for shaping arrowheads, but he doesn't point towards any evidence. He just has that input and just leaves. And he was saying just European goods don't equate to European settlers. So I think his argument is sort of what's making people a little bit iffy. But like I said, the other argument is that they have found this pottery from that time period. This does show that they possibly integrated in with the tribe, and someone who wasn't even on that land is sort of thrown in arguments without evidence. It just seems like a very weak argument, and I don't think they need to be persuaded. I think, in my eyes, I'm persuaded enough that is the lost colony. That's where I feel like, and I think that their fate wasn't because of lack of supplies of goods. I don't think it was an attack from anyone. I generally think that they just moved on. They told White that they were going to plan on going to these 2 areas. The reason why there was a fort on the inland, maybe that's what their aim was, is that he didn't mind them going to Hatteras Island, but he wanted something bigger on in the mainland, because that was how they were going to end up establishing a very big colony, bigger than anyone could ever imagine. But obviously it just didn't happen, and I think they ended up just living with the natives. And I think, like I said, that there's a lot of dirt to move with all of this as well. Some archaeologists said that this is, we've got hopeful clues that is going to lead us to the answer in a couple of years' time of it being cracked. I think it would be interesting to look at the DNA aspect of it and see what they can find. But like I said, this is popular culture affected it. This is American Horror Story with the butcher, John White's wife, who goes out there. She's a ghost and she's looking for blood for anyone that settles on the island. Yeah, it just shows how bloody and horrible it is, and it's almost like it's switched, really, isn't it? That they've looked at the natives as being the dangerous and bloody ones, whereas now we're looking at the colonists being the evil, scary ones of it all. But I think popular culture has affected what we know of it, and I think the archaeology, that house there, the way the account of them walking around in European style clothes, evidence like this, something from Nuremberg, a gun, a signet ring, all this pottery just shows that they just moved with everything around them, and as time has gone on, they kept true to their origins, remembering how they got there through keeping all these little heirlooms, like the tiny glass beads and the signet ring and the gun as well. I just think it just shows evidence they moved on, and eventually they've forgotten about being colonists because they become one with the tribe. So yeah, that's the end of that. So I'll ask any questions. Bill, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, not really, Jess, apart from the DNA. You mentioned the DNA. They're not well clear exactly to how the spread shifted around the area, north, south, east, and west, etc. But no, I haven't heard of this colony before. I genuinely haven't, you know. So
No.
Not that I know of them. I wonder how many other lost colonies like this that are dotted around the coast of America. I wonder. Yeah. Well, thank you, Jess. That's fine. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Bill. Pat, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No, I was up in the middle of the night, so I'm getting...
No, thank you. And anything that you'd like to ask or add? And you're on mute.
Turn your microphone on.
I'm just fascinated with this area now. I want to find out where it is. And I can see Raleigh Island. Raleigh Beach.
Hold on, I'll get it now.
No,
you could, if you type in on Google Roanoke Island, you do come up with a lot of things. But I think if you're going to type it for research, any of you, I found that you find more information if you type in Roanoke Colony. But I'll show you on a map now.
This is the thing, really. It's like it's hard to know who came there after the natives. You know, did they still own that land, or you know, was it colonized by other, you know, like Europeans? Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it would just sort of fill the picture in, but
yeah.
I'd never heard of it before, so it's been interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting. When I found out about this, it really did intrigue my interest, especially when you see a lot of popular culture sort of jumping in on the bandwagon. I definitely think that sort of helped people bring an interest to it. Oh, hang on a minute, just making the picture bigger because I clicked on it, but it wasn't. It's something here that sort of pinpoints things a little bit more easier. Share screen. So you can see the distance of where the lost colony is.
Oh yeah, now Jamestown. That's where I was looking for.
Yeah, so they think that they had moved over to there as well, and settled as well, and that's where they think the stopped. Oh, the sharing the screen has stopped. Oh, well, that's fine. Yeah, so basically that they think that they've split off into two groups and just settled there because there wasn't a lot of evidence to suggest a big group of colonists. It seemed that it was only a few of them, and that they're very close to the native tribes. So they just felt like that's them sort of keeping some things from home with them and just integrating ultimately.
Yeah.
So thank you, Anne. Henry, anything that you'd like to ask or add?
No. Well, the only thing I would say is that the size of the group that went probably weren't large enough to make it sustainable anyway. You know, just in the physical numbers, to make a major contribution. So it sounds more like they obviously split, scattered, integrated. It's well worth, I think, having a good read on later on.
Yeah. I think when you read into it again, be careful because some people have mixed some popular culture into their arguments. And you look at it and you think, oh, that didn't really happen. And people are just taking it as truth. But
thank you very much.
It's okay, thank you. Del, anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, that was absolutely fascinating. I mean, I've read about Roanoke and, you know, from various sources, including sort of the mystery of how they disappeared, as well as sort of the historic sense. My belief would be that it was a small colony that was set up and couldn't sustain itself or turned up at the wrong time of the year. No sort of resources other than whatever was there on the island, and had to sort of make friends with the native population, and then sort of basically integrated. I don't think they were massacred or anything. I just think they integrated. A documentary I saw 20, 30 years ago, I'm not sure if it's connected with Roanoke or Jamestown, but it was definitely that area and that era.
Yeah.
They'd found some ruins. They'd found a sort of farmhouse or farmstead, and on the side of it, they'd found remains, and it was European female. And how they knew that and how they dated it to the 16th century was because there was this metal, I don't know, frame on the head.
Yeah.
And they worked out that it was like the gabled hoods from the 16th century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I do remember that because it seemed sort of, oh, did they go back that far then? But obviously they did. You know, they were going out there then, and they would have taken fashions, and of course, they would have been about 20, 30 years behind, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and they would have been wearing what, you know, especially if somebody was well-to-do, would have been thinking, oh, they're still wearing this in Europe, therefore.
Yeah.
Making it. But they did definitely find this sort of metal framework that they sort of suggested was like an Elizabethan or European gabled hood.
Yeah.
But there was definitely, they said they found an arrowhead on the body. So this farmstead had been attacked.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. Thank you. And sorry for the disturbance.
It's all right, Del. Thank you for that little contribution there at the end. Some more information. We do love a bit of that. So thank you. And thank you everyone for joining today. I'll pass you over to Karl.
Yeah, I've got some input. Yeah.
Yeah, so here he is. Take it away, Karl.
Okay. I did say that we had some major announcements to make in April. But not yet. But the main thing is that Jessica and I have been talking about the classes going back to live, and basically it would be fitting for you to all appreciate the fact that you'll all be vaccinated, and Jessica's on the list for that to be so as well. So we need to start thinking about you guys meeting again. And I just want to know if, without giving anything away, are you all still happy about being called Archaeology Cymru?
Yes, why not?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. So the next newsletter is on its way. And there'll be some major changes coming up in the next couple of months, which a couple of you know what I'm talking about. But
who's that?
So anyone want to ask me anything before we all finish, and then hand back over to Jessica to close?
Who was it?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thank you, everyone.
Back over to you, Jessica. Anyway, thanks a lot. Oh, and oh yeah, I forgot to say, next week we're back. One of the minor changes of the class is next week we're actually back in Britain. So we'll be doing British archaeology one week, and then foreign archaeology another week. So next week is going to be in the period of King Arthur, but it'll be an early medieval theme. So that's what we're doing next week. And then the following week we'll be back to foreign archaeology, and then back to home. So that's it for me. So Jessica, over to you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for this week, and I'll see you next week. Take care, and I'll also see some of you tonight.
Thanks everyone.
Bye all.
Thanks then. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye. Have a good week.
And you. Bye.
All the
Don't
best.
forget to look up those politicians, Henry.
Yeah.
Henry, as you're still there and nobody else is watching now.
You're still recording.
Yeah, I'm still recording because this can go out quite nicely anyway. So the reason why I'm actually standing for GLAD is actually to put heritage on the agenda, and I've done what I've said I've done for the party. I've helped them get everything established. So this is me flying the flag, and this is not me as a politician, but yeah, we had a candidate in the parliamentary elections as well. So yes, I do believe I am your I'm on the list for people for you to vote for.
We'll all vote for him now on purpose. Just
he might get in, and then he'll have to do some work.
That's what I don't want.
To another commitment.
That's what I don't want. I'm getting people saying they vote for me. I'm saying, yeah, that's okay. It's fine. I'm okay with that. So yeah, but
we'll have a quick whip round in Wick.
Well, there's only 5 constituents there. I've got to get 2, haven't I? Most people ain't going to vote there anyway. So yeah. So Henry, you're the odd one out in all this. What I'll do, I'll stop the recording now anyway. So that's I've got to stop both thingamajigs.